Hello and welcome to this video. I've just read the sad news that the guitarist Bernie Marsden died. He apparently died on the 24th of August. I'm filming this on the 27th of August, so it's a few days later. I hadn't seen this news before, and as you know, when I see that one of the great musicians has passed, I always like to just jump in straight away and just give you my thoughts unprepared on that artist. If that artist meant something to me, and of course Bernie Marsden meant a lot to me, as he did to very many other musicians and music fans of my age. Around about 20 years ago, probably 19 years ago, I'd say 2004, I was playing in a blues band with a guitarist called Ian Parker, and we got invited on to Paul Jones's blues show on BBC Radio 2. This is a very exciting proposition, as it meant that we went into the studio at the BBC to record the session. This never happens really anymore, but back in the old days, you know, the BBC had these incredible recording studios, and they had one located just up the road from me at a place called Pebble Mill, which is no longer there. So I was very excited to toddle up to Pebble Mill. Parked my car, I went to sign in, and I signed in with the great actor Nigel Havers. I remember us two were getting signed in, he was doing another show, and then I went down to the studio to set up. The Paul Jones Blues Show was done in a sort of really novel way, really. It's a sort of thing that Jules Holland does on his show here in the UK. Paul Jones was literally sat on a desk with a microphone in the middle of a room with about 4 bands set up, all mic'd up. We were all together and the show was done live in one go. And Paul Jones would introduce you, he interviewed Ian, and then we would play. On that session was the Bernie Marsden band. As I walked in and saw Bernie Marsden, I became very, very excited and rushed over to him to thank him and shake his hand, to tell him what an important influence he had been. As a very young musician coming up, I'd come up in that sort of new wave of British heavy metal, and then from there I'd moved on to listen to bands like Deep Purple, Rainbow and White Snake, and White Snake became a favourite band of mine, especially the live album which I have behind me, Live in the Heart of the City, and we can see Bernie Marsden playing a beautiful twin neck Gibson SG on that. That album was an incredible album. White Snake were a very good hard rock, bluesy rhythm and blues band. Lots of soloing, lots of interplay, and absolutely great playing. And I listened to that album over and over again. So, who was Bernie Marsden? Bernie Marsden was born in, I think, 1951. He sort of enters the music world in 1972 at the age of 21 when he joins the band UFO. Back then, UFO were sort of the hard rock, proto heavy metal band that we know. They were a much more sort of psychedelic, trippy, you know, hippie type of band back then. He was in there for a while. And then I think he then joined Cozy Powell. Cozy Powell had a band called Hammer, and he joined that band. And Cozy's band was a sort of breeding ground for a lot of the musicians that would then come up in the sort of reassertion of rock music in the late 70s, early 80s. As the new wave of British heavy metal came up, it also brought up bands like Judas Priest, like UFO, but also bands like Rainbow and White Snake. And so I think Bernie at that point, knowing Cozy Powell, had an intro to a whole group of different musicians. I think he then joined a band called Babe Ruth at the time, put a couple of albums out, but they didn't really do that well. And then in 1976-77, as Deep Purple sort of imploded, Ian Pace and John Lord went off to form a band with Tony Ashton called Ashton, Pace and Lord. And Bernie Marsden was brought in on guitar for that. At the same time, David Coverdale had left, and he had formed a band that explored his interest in rhythm and blues and funkiness and soulfulness, called White Snake, and they did a couple of great albums. At some point, these two bands come together, and we get the sort of classic White Snake lineup, which would have been David Coverdale on vocals, Ian Pace on drums, John Lord on keyboards, organ really, Mickey Moody on slide guitar, another fantastic guitarist, Neil Murray, the great Neil Murray, who had before that played tons of fusion with Colosseum, and he'd even spent a short time in Bill Bruford's band playing with Alan Holdsworth, believe it or not. You can see some videos of doing that. And of course Bernie Marsden on guitar, and they recorded a number of albums. The first album I got by them was Ready and Willing, which I bought in 1980. Then they followed that up with Come and Get It. These were two albums that I just worshipped. I listened to them every single day. And of course the aforementioned Live in the Heart of the City. So that day when I was in that studio at Pebble Mill, it was so pleasing to be able to go up and shake the hand of a musician that had sort of formed you. What is it about Bernie Marsden? I think Bernie Marsden is almost like the classic rock guitarist, right? Very competent, able to play in any style of music. He has that sort of rock virtuosity. He's got the blues licks, but also he's very good playing songs. Now this is something that gets forgotten. There's the guitarists that we see and they're all dazzling and it's incredible. But if anybody listens to a track like say Fall for Your Loving, and you listen to that guitar solo as it surges up when Bernie's guitar solo comes in, that guitar solo is part of that song. You know, we hear that as a melody that goes with that song. He contributed and was a writer for bands with White Snake, songs like Here I Go Again, which are absolutely huge blockbuster songs. As a songwriter, he wrote some incredible songs, and this guy was an extremely talented, able guitarist, and I think that's why such incredible musicians chose him to play guitar for them. Later on, when White Snake reformed and turned themselves into the ultimate hair metal band, Bernie was out, and you had John Sykes coming in, and then Adrian Vandenberg, Steve Vai, it all went down that route. But that band really launched itself on a reworking of Here I Go Again, which was, of course, a Bernie Marsden song. So his importance in sort of rock history it's a very important legacy. Last year, I was at the drums and bass show up in Liverpool, walking around, and as I was walking down the corridor, towards me, I saw Bernie Marsden. And so he was on his phone. He was a bit busy at the time. I rushed over and I said, "Hello, Bernie. I just want to shake your hand and say hello." And he went, "Yeah, that's the thing." I said, "Do you remember the session we did at Pebble Mill?" And he said no, he couldn't remember it, of course. And he was quite busy, and he gave me a nice smile, and I walked off. That was last year, and these musicians who were so important for me growing up, for so many other musicians that made such incredible music, are passing on, and Bernie's another example of it. And it's very sad. It's incredible to see that guy was 72 when he passed. You know, thinking back to him in his mid-20s with White Snake doing such incredible music. So this has been my short tribute to Bernie Marsden. What else can I say? Go and check him out. If you don't know him, go and check him out. And Mickey Moody with his incredible slide playing, and the way those two musicians work off each other in the band, which is just magical stuff. Two really different guitar styles just coming together. Go and check him out on this album here, Live in the Heart of the City. That's actually a painting there. Back when bands could afford to get artists to paint, there they are on stage. Have I got any of this album is literally 40 years old, if not more. I don't know if I still have the inlay in here after all this time. No, it looks like it's lost. I do remember there was an inlay in this, but anyway, that was a very important album to me. Thank you, Bernie Marsden. Fantastic player. Oh no, I'll get that in a minute. Thank you, Bernie Marsden. Fantastic player, and you know, these incredible musicians are leaving us now, and it's as though that era of rock music as pop music is slowly filtering away. And what is really filtering away for me is the idea of blues and soul, rhythm and blues being the underlying form underneath pop music. And I really miss it, you know. And I think when I listen to a lot of modern pop music, some great songwriting, but it is devoid of that sort of gutsy feeling. Bernie Marsden had that gutsy feeling in buckets. And I think a couple of years ago, HRH had an award ceremony and they made him, you know, sort of a blues legend, which is totally right. He was a blues legend, one of the great British blues guitarists. Thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you on the next one.